the top 5 most influential prospects in the class of 2023. Now, for the sake of this discussion, I'm limiting this list to high school recruits because that's what National Signing Day is about. It's also the end of a recruiting cycle, like for real, where we actually get to turn the page and go to the next year. But also you're looking at this as a time when you're really filling in gaps as opposed to announcing entire classes. It's become kind of the second signing day, right? Backup signing day, if you will. Now, there are a couple of players on this list that I'll point out as we get to them who are announcing or have not or will not announce their National Signing Day intentions until, well, after National Signing Day is gone. I'll get to those, right? But off the rip, I want to make an honorable mention for Nebraska wide receiver Malachi Coleman. I love this dude. I love his game. I love his film, and I love his attitude, all right? 6'4", 190-pound wide receiver who has sprinted the 100-meter dash in 10.46 seconds and podium Nebraska state championships in the 100, the 200, and the triple jump. I am a track nerd. I will always be a track nerd. I ran track at the University of Tulsa. I got a letter jacket to show for it, right? I'm a 400-meter guy, the strong kind, not the fast kind. That means I'm the kind that had to do 8 and 12 200-meter sprints instead of the 6 that Michael Johnson could do because he could fly. Anyway, all to say, if you hear me talk about track times, it's because I put a lot of emphasis into speed and verifiable speed. And there is no more verifiable speed than running on a track in a high school meet where they are using laser times, okay? So that's number one. He also has a really great video that you should search out on the interwebs of him seemingly hitting his head on the backboard as he is sprinting back to make a LeBron James style block for his basketball team at Lincoln East in Lincoln, Nebraska. It might have been doctored. It might not have been. What I can tell you is it's awesome, and you got to be able to leap to get that sort of doctoring in the first place. Just go check it out. It's a lot of fun. And then as a football player, 60% of the passes he caught as a junior were touchdowns. He averaged 33 yards per catch, and he played both ways, had 57 tackles, 7.5 sacks, and 4 forced fumbles as a defensive end. There's a lot of conversation about whether or not he should even be playing wide receiver. But underneath all of that is just whether or not Nebraska not was going to win him, but even knew who he was. Because going into June 2021 of his summer camp, where he's going to Friday Night Lights in Nebraska, he didn't have an offer. And he went through camp without an offer. It feels kind of wild being that he's the number 1 player in the state of Nebraska, and you are the University of Nebraska. Of course, this is Scott Frock's dream and not Matt Rule's. Meanwhile, Matt Rule shows up right as Coach Prime shows up to Colorado. Coach Prime is putting full court press on the number 1 wide receiver in Nebraska. And the quote that Malachi gave to 247 is, saying no to Coach Prime was like saying no to God. Score 1 for the Rule in Nebraska because he got that dude. He did something similar with Charlie Brewer at Baylor, and that turned out to be an outstanding omen for what was ahead for Baylor. All right, that's my honorable mention. You can tell I'm excited about this list if I'm talking that much about a guy who doesn't even make the top 5. So we're going to go at number 5. We're going to move our way up. To start here, 5-star defensive end Nick Harbor, who may or may not have announced his intentions of where he's going to play his college football by the time you are listening or watching this. At the moment, it feels like a lean towards South Carolina. Michigan feels good about it. Oregon felt good about it at one point. Even Colorado felt good about it at one point. We'll leave it to Nick to tell us what he's going to do. But this dude is ridiculous. I am always overwhelmed by the size and speed of some of these guys that are 17, 18 years old getting ready to play college football. And Nick is one of those guys. He is an edge, right? We're talking 6'4", 230. He can put on another 20 pounds and be fine. But at that speed, at that height and that weight, he's running this kind of speed. 20.79 in 200 meters. 10.28 in the 100 meters. These are ridiculously fast times, period. These are the times for which, yes, I could develop you into an Olympian. If you showed up to LSU, you showed up to Florida, you showed up to, my goodness, Texas A&M, any number of great men's track programs with that sort of speed at that size, first thing you're going to do is have you drop a lot of weight and make you a little bit faster, because usually a great 100, 200 meter sprinter is between 150, 175 pounds, right? That's not Nick Harbor. Nick Harbor is basically twice that size and running that fast. That is terrifying coming off of any edge ever. I can only imagine what it's like for a left tackle to try to block him because he knows he's beat by 2 steps as soon as the ball is snapped. That is really ridiculous. And then, again, if you watch him coming off the line, he looks like a fired gun, hunts like a quarterback, and strikes like a lion that's hungry, hits like Clubber Lang. I mean, it's really vicious what he can do, and I'm excited to see him play a little bit of college football. The comp right now for me is Vernon Davis. For those of y'all that are in the thick of college football, and in the thick of the NFL for that matter, but in the thick of college football, you remember the way we used to talk about Vernon Davis. A man that big and that fast with 4.3 speed should not exist. And yet, there was Vernon Davis at Maryland standing right in front of us. My goodness, if Nick Harbor turns out to be that kind of dude, it's going to be something phenomenal coming out of Archbishop Carroll in DC. All right. Next on the list for me is 5-star tight end Deuce Robinson. Another man that probably won't announce where he is going to play football on National Signing Day because there's a lot that goes into this. But off the rip, you should know that it feels like it's a 2-horse race between USC, Lincoln Riley, and UGA, Kirby Smart. Now, one of those folks is going to try to convince Deuce Robinson that he could be the next great tight end out of Arizona. He's from Phoenix, like, say, Mark Andrews, who left Arizona with the state record for receiving yards as a wide receiver, went to Oklahoma, had himself moved from wide receiver to tight end, and became a Mackey Award winner, All-American Pro Bowl tight end for the Baltimore Ravens. That's what Lincoln Riley is pitching. You saw what I'm able to do with that guy. Let me do that with you. And he has the size to do this. We're talking 6'6", 240, right? Runs like a freight train, but there's something else to that. And then if you're obviously Kirby Smart, you're going, hey, forget Mark Andrews, who feels like a decade ago. I'll just point you to the guy that just won a national championship and was the best receiver on my football team in Brock Bowers. Do you want to be the king of Arizona or the king of the West Coast? Because that's what we're doing over here, right? You could be the next great tight end prospect. And you understand, in my offense, that's where the ball goes. We don't really look to stretch the field that often if we can get it to those big tight ends in the middle of the field, and you can be one of those guys. But the rub here isn't necessarily that Robinson is indecisive, though he might be. I mean, you're making a very big decision. It's that he might be a better baseball prospect than he is a football prospect. And that's wild. But to underscore this, the LA Dodgers liked him enough to invite him to participate in a private workout in January because the comp for him in baseball is Aaron Judge. That's baseball, people. That's not me. All right. And if you go look him up and you see him swing a bat, you kind of understand. If you get that kind of, well, talent on a baseball diamond, we understand what it means because it's not even the chicks dig the long ball anymore. It's that nerds dig the long ball. We're willing to strike out all the time rather than put the ball in play because we might get an opportunity to hit a home run. I'm a catcher, so I feel some kind of way about that because I always try to get the ball in play and you got to, if somebody else makes a mistake, you get on base. But they're like, hey, man, what are bases if you can just hit over the wall? Anyway, I didn't have that kind of ability either, so I'm sort of envious. I had to put the ball in the play. Deuce Robinson does not. He can just go knock it over the park out of the park if he wants to. But as a tight end in high school, coming out of Pinnacle, same high school Spencer Rattler went to, he had 1,600 yards receiving and 14 TDs en route to a state title appearance. 1,600 yards receiving as a tight end, that's ridiculous. Like it's unfair. I would also add that, Rattler might have something to say to Deuce Robinson about playing for Lincoln Riley, but maybe that doesn't even factor in at all. Either way, if Deuce Robinson decides to wait until, say, the MLB draft to make his decision, I don't think anybody's going to worry about it. I mean, we watched JT Tuimoloau not make his decision until like July 4th of 2021 to get into, right, Ohio State. So if you want to make the financial aid agreement, I'm sure Georgia or USC will make it work for him, especially if he's got that kind of ability. I also add another wrinkle in here for Lincoln Riley. He's dealt with, a top 10 baseball player before named Kyler Murray. It worked out just fine for Lincoln Riley, not so much for the Oakland Athletics. All right. Number 3 on the list for me, Oklahoma signee and quarterback Jackson Arnold, the biggest recruit of the Brent Venables era at the University of Oklahoma. His resume is awesome. 2022 Elite 11 MVP. Usually a pretty good predictor of future success. All right. Max Prep Player of the Year, National Gatorade Player of the Year. That's a big one. Started 31 games, 128. Yeesh. Okay. As a senior, threw for 3,476 yards, rushed for 921, and accounted for 57 total TDs at Denton Guyer, basically a rock throw away from Norman, Oklahoma. He's got the goods. Okay. There's also a couple of things that I want to underscore here. The last National Gatorade Player of the Year to commit and sign with Oklahoma is Kyler Murray. If you look at Jackson Arnold and you see some Kyler Murray ability, maybe not with the wheels, but with the arm talent, you'll see what I'm talking about, right? You also satisfy what I call the Lincoln Riley criteria for starting quarterbacks, which, number one, is the guy a winner? Yeah. You go 28-3, you're a winner. Is he smart? Yes. Is he a competitor? Yes. Do people want to follow him? Yes. Along that list, you get to arm talent, but it really doesn't factor into it all that much for Riley because he agrees if you're accurate and you're a winner, I can make this work. If you can make things happen off schedule, I'm probably going to make you the starting quarterback, just like he did with Caleb Williams at a time when they needed a guy at Oklahoma who can make something happen when the line was breaking down. That's why Spencer Rattler went on the bench, why Caleb Williams has really become a Heisman Trophy winner and is returning to USC with that privilege. I'm excited to see what Arnold does because I think he really is going to propel Oklahoma into the SEC. And whether or not Dylan Gabriel is the guy that starts the whole year, I love to think that you get the redshirt year for Jackson Arnold, but seeing how Nick Evers said enough of this and went to Wisconsin, you're going to have to work really hard to keep your thoroughbred very, very comfortable to keep him around for your eventual onslaught, I hope, into the SEC, if not, walking in there kind of gingerly and not looking around, not trying to make eye contact. All right, number 2 on the list for me, Colorado cornerback Cormani McClain. All right. The reason that this is such a big deal is not just because he's a 5-star recruit, not just because he's number 1 player at his position. It's because he joins another 5-star recruit and another former number 1 at his position at the same position on a field where you can have 2 on the field at the same time. It ain't like having 2 quarterbacks. It's having 2 cornerbacks. McClain and Travis Hunter on one side of the field is ridiculous. That means you're going to be throwing to the middle of the field a lot because I believe both of those guys have the length, the speed, the size to take away your number 1. And for that matter, your number 2, your tight ends better be able to come to play to work against those linebackers and safeties because, well, frankly, you have the head coach is the best defensive back of all time, Deion Sanders, a.k.a. Coach Prime. You also have a defensive coordinator who is a defensive backs coach that came from Alabama in Charles Kelly, all right? That is also a man who knows from defensive back play and has some national championships to show for it. You put all 4 of these people together, it's easy to see how they form up like Voltron and give everybody the business. I'm excited for Colorado football. I'm excited to see what Cormani McClain looks like because I think the comp now is like Seattle Seahawks, Tariq Woolen coming out of UTSA. A lot of folks didn't know about Tariq Woolen until he, showed up 6'4" with 4.3 speed and started shutting people down. And then I think he had 6 interceptions in his rookie year at Seattle. Just ridiculous. And shout out to Pete Carroll. Just seems to know how to go find the long rangy guy with speed. And that's exactly what McClain is. I'm really interested to see whether or not Travis Hunter goes even further to the other side of the ball playing wide receiver and try to go both ways a little more often in Colorado. But we'll see because it is a step up in competition. But it's a step up in competition for a guy who was already cited as the best of his peers. And then number 1 on the list for me, 5-star quarterback, Texas quarterback, Arch Manning. Now, there's a lot to go into this. The first is his name is Arch Manning, right? He is named for his grandfather, who was a saint at the University of Ole Miss and a saint with the New Orleans Saints, like on that scale, canonization. And his uncles are, yes, Peyton and Eli, and his daddy Cupper could absolutely play. He is joining that conversation, even as he's been a part of that first family football all of his life. Number 1 overall recruit in the class, man. That's the other part. Now, the knock on him is that he played small school football at Isidore Newman. I mean, you could say that if you want to. So did Malachi Nelson, USC starter. But more than that, it didn't seem to hurt Odell Beckham none to go to Isidore Newman. And it certainly didn't seem to hurt Eli none to go to Isidore Newman. they're okay. It's really about what happens once he gets on campus. And what has happened so far is he's lost his student ID at least twice. Enough that students have picked it up, snapped it, said, hey, Arch, I'm going to go turn this in to the place where you go pick these things up. I got you. Twice in 1 month. Don't let that be indicative of putting the ball on the floor. That's all I'm saying, right? Otherwise, it might get bad. But he's got a year. I think he's got a year. I know that we're going to talk about Arch Manning as if he's in a quarterback derby with Quinn Ewers. But I think that's because people are underwhelmed by Quinn Ewers and not because there's actually going to be a quarterback competition. And if you listen to Steve Sarkisian closely, you'll hear we treated him like a freshman quarterback in 2022 because he was a freshman quarterback in 2022. He skipped the senior year of football where his coach, Riley Dodge, had a plan set up that he just threw in the gutter so he could go to Ohio State to collect his money, which, you know, I feel like is the best decision. Then he goes to Texas, wins the job, right, ahead of Hudson Card, and he has some good days and some bad days. On his best day, he can beat Alabama. I don't think you want to put that guy on the shelf if you're Steve Sarkisian, and you would love to save Arch Manning for your eventual foray into the SEC with the full throat of Omaha Productions and all that comes behind that, behind Arch Manning. In addition to, Texas is one of the most moneyed universities in all the sport. It's one of the reasons we keep dunking on them because money apparently cannot buy them championships. But perhaps a talent like Arch Manning can get them a championship. We'll have to wait and see. Thank you for watching the #1 college football show. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video so that you don't miss any of the best college football coverage in America.